And I take it we're live? Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for our pre-meeting. We are going to have some discussion around land use. Mr. Semino, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Discussion tonight happens to deal with land use issues and what I will identify as concerns that have been raised over the last few months, last year or so. Try to make sure we are hearing the same things you are and are going to be addressing the same things you'd like us to address. So with that, whenever we do text changes, we always have to talk about how is it consistent with the 2040 plan. I will mention that several of the items that have come to the forefront have also been mentioned in the 2040 plan as needing addressing. So I thank the board for kind of pushing this issue forward. Our vision statement was to make Huntersville the most livable community in North Carolina, and so if there's some text changes that need to be made to do that, achieve that, then so be it. So the 2040 plan, I'm not going to go into great detail on this. I just want to highlight, these are certain sections of the 2040 plan that may resonate with you on some things that you would like to see done. So starting at the top, land use 7.2, consider updates to the zoning ordinance to improve multifamily design is one of the issues. 8.2 is encourage higher design standards, whether it's residential or other. 10.3, land use 10.3, consider allowances for house scale missing middle housing. What is that? So think of missing middle as the duplex, the triplex, the quadruplex, and not the big 100, 200, 300 unit apartment building. So kind of get towards that. 11.1, protect and enhance unique character of Huntersville's neighborhood to safeguard from potentially negative impacts of development and redevelopment. 12.3, blend new development with existing neighborhoods through the use of transition in building types and placement of open space buffers and other site features. DT 1.3, that's downtown 1.3 in tier 2 areas. Create a transitional area from the core of downtown to surrounding neighborhoods, so kind of reduce that intensity down. Downtown DT2, step down in intensity and density near the established residential neighborhoods, and finishing up with the downtown to new developments, respect the scale and character of the historical structures and established neighborhoods. So these are just, again, some of the big vision statements that were made that kind of guide us. So what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about things that over the months and again over the years we've been hearing things to be looking at and addressing. So we're going to start off with our major residential subdivisions are now administrative. We mentioned throughout that process that there was a provision in there that gave the board flexibility to increase setbacks. And from, like, if you're a higher density development, you're next to a lower intensity development, you can ask for more than, you could get more than 20 feet, which is the minimum. So one of the things that we think need to be done is to increase that setback. And we'll just have to say, it might be something along the lines of, you know, any subdivision that has the same density, it's a 20 foot, but if it's a lower density, then you need to go to X number of feet. And it might be a sliding scale. The solutions we'll work with on, so we're not getting into the solutions today, but that's one of the items that's been identified. Another more recent one, large scale, one building, one lot apartment, adjacent to smaller scale residential is by right with administrative staff approval. How do you blend in these parcels? This is different than the small scale 2-unit, 3-unit, or 4-unit apartments. This is talking about the hundreds of unit apartment complexes next to residential is an area of concern. There's a state statute, and you've got it on your agenda to call for a public hearing next month. It says, in essence, if there's a development, an apartment complex that has at least 2 affordable housing units in it, which is 80% of the median income is the definition of that, that you can't have any harmony requirements, meaning you can't ask the architecture to try to blend in with the area. So that is something that we will be amending our ordinance to comply with the statutes, but it's something to just keep in mind that, we will not have the ability to ask for modifications to the building if there are at least 2 affordable housing units at 80% of the median income. Kind of along the same lines, we permit today in many of our zoning districts a large-scale 1 building, 1 apartment unit by right. But your smaller scale major subdivisions where there's streets and storm drainage and things of that nature, they're limited to 30% attached. So what does that mean then? I could build a several hundred unit apartment building, but I couldn't build 60 townhomes. And so we've got to kind of think through that. Now, you might not want to allow townhomes everywhere, but again, this is kind of keeping your eye on the ball as to, is there really a disincentive to having that type of development in there. We just recently passed first rental single-family subdivision. On your agenda tonight is a text amendment that we think helps it address some of the issues there. And it's not, we can't regulate rental subdivisions. We just can't regulate. But what we can do is make them adhere to the subdivision standards, the same as any other conventional subdivision. So that's what we're going to be doing tonight to talk about. And we have heard some discussion about the number of senior housing units. Concern, is there too much or is too little? Just kind of where are we at? So, Mayor and Commissioners, this is just some of the topics that we've identified. It's in no case exhaustive, but it's the start of the discussion, and now it's your meeting, and we're happy to address any concerns you have. I also have some other backup slides just in case it relates to questions that are asked.
Absolutely. Thank you for this. I think these are, what you've identified are things that I know we've been talking about for quite some time. I'd like to open it up. Any questions? Commissioner Phillips.
Jack, with the senior housing, is that considered any form of discrimination if we decide that that's something we don't want to pursue anymore because of age?
Yes, right. We would not be able to prohibit a development because of age. I do have actually a slide on that. So these are the age-restricted independent living. So this is not, nursing care or dependent care, but the independent. There's 788 units that are in Huntersville. That only represents 2.5% of all the approved units in Huntersville. And if you look at our, from the graph from the 2040 plan, I circled around the 55 and up. That's in the 25% of our population is in that category. So my point is that our housing inventory of seniors is not that great, but then again, not everybody wants to live in a senior housing development, right? So I thought I'd share that with you since we're talking about senior housing.
Commissioner Kovacs, do you have a question around that?
It kind of goes with the Harmony. I know you guys discussed that at the HOAB meeting last week. And, well, first off, during the Harmony, there was a lot of discussion about what we would do in the case that, they put 2 units in so that way they can qualify, and then how do we keep track of to make sure they keep that going or they don't do it to get the plan through and then take those away after a year. So that is a concern that I have also. But when we were talking about the Harmony, what were the 2 groups of housing that would not fall into the Harmony?
Yeah, so the way the text amendment is presented to you tonight, there will be senior housing age restricted, and we have some examples of that. The courtyards at Huntersville, they're condominiums. The courtyards at Kinnaman Park over by the Park Huntersville, they're condominiums. Okay. I will say that the courtyard developers, Epcon, has had concerns and issues with that. So their latest project on Eastfield Road, the courtyards on Eastfield Road, they are individual lots. So they're starting to move towards individual lots, okay? The other one, which is an interesting one, is the Hope House. And they had a wonderful transition of just putting some little tiny houses back there to help the family get on their feet and move on. So we are exempting the age-restricted and the congregate care, which would cover that Hope House situation if somebody wants to do that. And we can obviously talk a lot more about that at the public hearing, but those were that was the intention.
Okay.
I have a quick question for you. Anything in our zoning that allows for tiny house subdivisions?
Yeah, you could build one today. You could have built one back in 1996. So we have no, in most of our zoning districts, except rural and transition, we have no minimum lot size.
Right.
And we have no minimum house size. You don't regulate, square footage of house. So we have always had that ability for someone to do that. From time to time, people have come in and talked to us about that, but for whatever reason, they haven't pushed forward.
I wonder if it's land costs. That might
Yeah,
have to do with something.
I'm not sure. There's a type of development that is happening, which it's called cottage home development. And so usually those are like an acre, maybe an acre and a half, and they'll take like 6 tiny homes and build them around a courtyard. And as a matter of fact, our project just down the street here, where they did townhomes, they didn't do tiny homes, but they did townhomes. And they put them, every building fronts a street or an open space. Well, they fronted a little courtyard. So those kind of things could happen, and I think the one right down the street next to the school is a good example of just putting houses and facing a little courtyard.
Okay, Commissioner Kovacs.
So with large-scale, one building, one lot apartment adjacent to smaller-scale residential as by right, I know that is a concern, and it's something that we've talked about. Is that something that we can look into
Yeah.
changing, so that way there is the ability for residents to speak on this behalf in this type of situation?
Yeah, so as with anything, there's probably about 10 different ways you can get to the end. So there's a lot, one, you could just say, you can have the one building, one lot if it's an acre or less, but if it's over an acre, you gotta go through a regular process where you have input. So that's, by and in of itself, is gonna cause it to be kind of smaller scale. You could do it based on density, but to answer your question, absolutely. There will be multiple issues. We just need to make sure we're all identifying the problem before we start coming up with solutions, and that seemed to be a problem that was worthy of pursuing.
That one's the one that jumped out to me the most, because I think that is something we're kind of dealing with right now.
Commissioner
I guess that's what I get for being courteous. My question's pretty much the same thing as Amber, because, I'm sorry, Commissioner Kovacs, my apologies. Just the idea that a one building, one lot apartment can be built by right, but a townhome falls into the subdivision. If I had my choice, I'd rather have townhomes next to me than a one building apartment. So I would second her thought on seeing what we can do to address that particular issue.
Commissioner Boone.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got 2 questions. Jack, we have a lot of older neighborhoods where some single-family subdivisions homes have been abandoned, and people are coming in to Huntersville now. Can they tear those single-family down and put a duplex into a subdivision right now?
The answer to the question, it depends on the zoning, but most of the zoning that's there between I-77 and 115 in that kind of core area, the answer would be yes.
So the Shepherd's Vineyard would be an example that they could tear a home down in there and put a duplex.
That would be true. Now, having said that, though, most of the subdivisions have restrictive covenants. We don't enforce them, but they're enforceable as long as everybody, is treated the same. So I would just dare say if somebody, I'll take, and Shepherd's Vineyard, and most of the older subdivisions, I'm talking about pre-1996, they are zoned neighborhood residential, and they allow single-family only. So I apologize, but the answer to your question is I've got a zoning map, and let me pull it up. So this right here map, and that you have to kind of look behind, but sorry for that. But this is the Shepherd's Vineyard area right in here, and that's a light yellow. That light yellow is called neighborhood residential, and that's single family only. So in that particular instance, the answer would be no, we would not issue a permit, and if the restrictive, even if we did, the restrictive covenants could kick in and prevent that. What about GR? Sorry. General, yeah. I apologize. I am talking about GR, general residential, GR. And so this is zone GR, that bright yellow, that is neighborhood residential. That does allow duplexes and single family. So kind of everything behind town center here, this area right in here, the Hamptons, pretty much all the subdivisions that were approved prior to 1996, they're all GR, general residential. Again, to clarify, general residential does not allow anything other than single-family homes. Thank you.
And then my final question is that, and I put this on my legislative agenda about Senate Bill 105, and this is where Harmony comes up into the discussion from the HOAB last week, where if you read Senate Bill 105, it's just a educational bill. It speaks about nothing but education. All of a sudden, bingo, Harmony's right there in the middle of it. Why that happened,
So I will just say, it is not unusual to see state statutes, a big bill. Could be, I'll give you an example of the bill for the state budget. And stuck in there was something that says if a state or DO or local government requires traffic improvements for a school, then we have to fund it. That's one of those things where there's a huge bill and then just something's tucked in there. That's what happened here on that.
I guess, Emily, my next question is there any chance of getting that taken out? And what would the process be?
Well, we do have a legislative goals meeting coming, so if that's something that this board would like to explore, that may be a topic for that meeting.
It's already on our list. I've been compiling.
I know it was on my list.
Yes, therefore it's on mine.
So
Commissioner
just
Boone.
to follow up on a comment that Commissioner Kovacs made, and that was, the statute changed, and it said if there's 2 or more affordable units, basically 80% of the income, you can't ask the architecture to blend in with the neighborhood. And as it was talked about at the Ordinances Advisory Board is, okay, you issue the permit, how are you going to keep up with it? I mean, that is going to be incredibly difficult to 4, 5, 10 years down the road, saying, we gave you a break from your architecture because you were doing this, and trying to track it is going to be difficult at best.
Well, and the fact is, we're going to have to continue to keep our eye on what's happening. I know, a year ago, we were up there discussing where they were throwing out, well, let's just make all residential lots multifamily. And that didn't happen last year, but I would be hard pressed to see that not coming back up yet again.
So I agree with you. I mean, there's certain things that keep coming back and coming back and coming back. So I'm going to just kind of make a statement here, and the statement is this. Back in 1996, Huntersville changed our code to what we basically have today. And we took all the old subdivisions and put them in GR, general residential, said those are single family.
Yep.
And then you see that bright yellow and then the other highway, commercial, other zones, those are zoned where you could allow single family, a duplex. If it's a major subdivision, at least 30% of your homes could be attached. So in other words, Huntersville provided the flexibility back in 1996, so 26 years ago. The town provided that flexibility for certain areas. And so when the state comes in and does a sweeping across the board and starts saying these kind of things, that, in a sense, we would get penalized, I would say, for doing something back in the 90s that gives developer flexibility, but also provides some protection. In this case, say 30% of your houses can be attached, but then 70% have to be detached. So I'll just leave that commentary there for you to.
Well, Mr. Semino, we have expressed that when on our trips to Raleigh, that we do have flexibility within our zoning, and will continue to argue that same point in order to protect what we do have. So thank you for that. Any other questions about the presentation this evening? Commissioner Boone?
One follow-up question, Jack. I just want to be sure that I'm clear on your color-coded map there of the town. Everything that's coded in yellow, a duplex can be built in those areas?
In the bright yellow.
Bright yellow, that would be correct. However, if it's a major subdivision, in other words, they're adding street system in there, if they're building stormwater and there's stormwater easements going across properties, that would kind of kick it into a major subdivision, there's a 30% cap. So that means 70% have to be detached, and up to 30%, it isn't required to be, but up to 30% could be attached, whether it's a duplex, a triplex, an apartment, a townhome. Yes, so that is, and that's been the case since '96, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there interest for staff to continue to pursue some solutions and options for what we've just identified? Yes? Yes. Okay. Mr. Semino, do you need anything else from this board?
No, I will just say for the game plan then, we have a Huntersville Ordinances Advisory Board, okay? So our thought would be to have conversations with the Huntersville Ordinances Advisory Board as to, and the planning board, just keep everybody in the loop and keep the town board in the loop as to, these are the things we've identified. We'll give multiple options of how to address these. I've thrown down just a few options that we could do here. You know, here's the problem and here's maybe some things we can do. And then we'll develop a text amendments, and then either the Ordinance Advisory Board, the staff, the planning board, town board might sponsor a text amendment, and we'll start addressing the text amendments. And again, I would just point out that, you know, a lot of these text amendments are kind of tied to things that we said we needed to do anyways.
Absolutely. Yes, I for one feel that staff working with the Ordinance Advisory Board and the Planning Board is very important to make sure that everybody's having eyes on there and that they can weigh in before it gets to this board.
There's one thing, clarity, and that's the senior housing unit. So we provided you an idea of an inventory of, you know, what percentage of our housing is senior housing, and then kind of give you an idea that we've got some 25% of people that qualify for that. At this point in time, I don't hear the alarms of we need to stop that. And we can't really stop senior housing anyways, but I'll just say we're going to be concentrating on those upper issues, and then if board members have concerns, just let us know.
Can I ask a question about senior housing, especially the housing that you identified on one of your slides? Do you mind flipping over to it? Yes, that.
Let's see.
That one.
These are, yep.
Thank you, the age-restricted independent housing. Now, are these developments treated any differently under our traffic impact analysis, et cetera? Or are they given,
So if they, if the number of trips generated, the ordinance for traffic impact analysis kick in no matter what the development is, okay? So the answer to your question is everybody's treated the same. The difference, though, is if you have a 200-unit senior housing development, the trip generation for that is going to be lower because they're just not doing the morning trips and going to work as much. It's not a great deal. I don't know if Stephen Trott's here. Did I say that correctly, Stephen? Or do I need to have you retract what I just said, since I'm not the traffic person?
I'll try to answer. So there's been studies done on senior communities or age-restricted communities. What they found is that the traffic generated during peak times and for the day is less than those for unrestricted development. So as Jack mentioned, TIA would apply, but typically the traffic generated from a age-restricted, meaning you have to be a certain age to be in there, is a good deal less from that, based on the current rates.
so all of these listed here, and this may be for Mr. Semino, all these listed here in their covenants, are age restricted. They could never be turned around and modified to allow anyone in them.
Right, so there's covenants on these properties that.
So are the covenants what allows them to have lower numbers on the TIA?
Well, that and some of these have been rezoning, so, that adds another layer of conditions as well. So those are the things that say the traffic is going to be lower. So they have to stay that way.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Kovacs, do you have a question?
I was questioning myself on if Symphony Park is age restricted.
It is. Symphony Park is age restricted. That's the Sam Fur Independent Living, 320 multifamily.
Okay, the name threw me off.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. We just put what it was approved as.
Gotcha, okay, thank you.
There's another one, senior housing, that's right next to Burkdale Village. If you might see it, it's tucked away in the back corner. That's called Sam Fur Senior Living. That's 62 multifamily units.
And the other apartments that are down here off of 115, those aren't listed here?
Yes, Brian, that's, what is that called? That was Congregate Care. Oh, Congregate Care?
Arden is
Arden
Congregate
is
Care?
Congregate Care. So so the independent living, so that's the breaking point. Independent living is just an apartment. They might have exercise and things like that, but they don't have care for the people.
Okay. So having someone on staff that provides some assistance moves them into that congregate care category? Okay.
Is that right? And Arden is got dependent?
I would have swore, yes.
As we've matured as a society, those
Rants
lines
and
have gotten
Ridge.
blurred.
It's just senior apartments. It is senior apartments. The new 18-unit apartment building across from St. Mark's?
Market rate.
Okay. Even though it's marketed for seniors, it's market rate.
Right, they did not come in under that,
Okay.
under a program. And as we mature as a society and as these things come along, people start offering amenities that weren't traditionally in independent living facilities. It's an attraction to get them the leg up on their competition. So that gap is narrowing and blurring.
So is it necessary for us to unblur those lines a little bit? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I would just say, I think to me, that will be a natural part of us looking at this code, is trying to make sure that if they offer concierge service to provide you some food, that's not really congregate care. If they have rehab center, if they're offering a doctor's medical off, things of that nature, those things are more in line with what congregate care is intended to do. So to answer your question, that would be our intention, is to hone down and make sure that we make that distinction.
Commissioner Kovacs?
So in your free time, could we possibly see the numbers with congregate, or the numbers of congregate care? The ones that we're all mentioning, feeling crazy, just to see those numbers added together. I know they're different, but just out of curiosity.
So Brian
Thank you.
will work on getting that to every board member.
His free time.
Yep.
Commissioner Boone?
Yes, the courtyard at Connersville and Park.
Yeah, that's my fault that they've been sold out. The one at Eastfield Road, as a matter of fact, is sold out. So yeah, that's. Ryan, did you give me that chart? Well, we'll make sure we get that chart. I apologize.
Any other questions? Mr. Semino, thank you so very much for spending this time with us.
Thank you.
I think this was productive, and hopefully you've gotten some sound direction.
Yes.
If you need any other, come back and see us. And with that, we have 16 minutes board. We will go into recess and come back at 6 o'clock.